We've been listening to officials in Washington, D.C., particularly John Donnelly, the fire and EMS chief in D.C., give an update on the deadly midair collision Wednesday evening in Virginia, just outside of our nation's capital. He said there are 41 remains in total of the 67 believed to be dead that have been recovered. 28 have been positively identified, and as of 6 a.m. this morning, next of kin notifications have been made to 18 families. He also said, obviously, this is a very tough response for their people, for their responders who are working the scene, which you can only imagine is an understatement. Let's go to CBS News correspondent Skyler Henry, who is inside that briefing and is at Reagan National Airport with the latest. And Skyler, you asked a question regarding the conditions for recovery, whether it is impacting the recovery and whether they fear that they won't be able to recover all of the bodies. What was the response?
Yeah, two parts to that. There is rain in this forecast here in Washington, D.C. for the rest of the day. The fire chief, Donnelly, spoke to that, saying that they train for these types of conditions year-round, and so they feel as if this will not impact their recovery process up until this point. In addition to that, resources coming in to help try to figure out exactly where the rest of these bodies may be. On that front, there was a question that was asked talking about the removal of the debris and whether taking out parts of the fuselage will help them recover the rest of the remains. The chief, as well as other officials, say that they felt confident that that might lead to the discovery of the rest of those remains. As you pointed out, only 41 of the 67 have been recovered up until this point, 28 positively ID'd, and then, yes, 18 next of kin families have been notified, and so there's still a long way to go in this process. We have spoken with the Coast Guard, who've talked about the number of cruise resources as well as part of the unified command here in the D.C. area along the Potomac that is helping with this recovery process as well. Something else to point out here has been how this has impacted the airport. We know that 2 runways, there are normally 3 here at Reagan National Airport that are in service. 2 runways have been closed. That's referred to as the crosswind runways, so to speak. They've been closed so as not to jeopardize the recovery process in all of this. We know that it is a reduced capacity in terms of the operational standpoints here at Reagan National as well. The number of flights that typically come in and out of here, around 800 flights a day. There have already been 100 cancellations here so far throughout the day today. Officials say that it will be a slow but steady bounce back, so to speak. They anticipate at least a week before those runways open back up and that this airport will be fully operational. And
Skyler, since we last talked to you, the Army has released the names of at least 2 of the deceased soldiers from the Black Hawk helicopter. Staff Sergeant Ryan Austin O'Hara of Georgia, whom we have identified as a news network. Also, the remains of Chief Warrant Officer Andrew Lloyd Eves of Maryland. Those remains haven't been recovered yet. And at the request of the family, the name of the 3rd soldier will not be released at this time. And it is believed also that that soldier's remains have not been recovered yet. But interestingly, that Chief Donnelly said that a salvage crew was on scene. Coast Guard cutters are on scene. But the salvage crew is on scene to assess how to recover the aircraft from the water, and that they hope to start that by tomorrow afternoon?
Yeah, and we will get a bit of details as far as the breakdown on the recovery process. What many experts have said is that the fuselage itself would have to be removed and put onto either a barge or some sort of apparatus that could get it out of the way, quite frankly, so that the recovery process can continue. The chief also said that they have searched a pretty significant portion of the river already, and I think based off of what they have able to find up until this point, they feel is pretty confident as to the rest of the remains being perhaps under or close to where the parts of the fuselage may be. Remember, officials said that at least upon initial impact, it broke into 3 pieces. And so there are certainly challenges with moving around. We expect to get more details on that process tomorrow as they continue to work through this recovery effort.
I thought that several questions were interesting to specifically the VP of the airport, and you sort of sidestepped those questions and referred us to the FAA, referred journalists to the FAA. But one of the questions was, have you ever raised concerns about the crowded airspace with the FAA? His response was that safety was one of our top priorities, but that reporter continued to press and said that, but there have been near misses. Did you bring that up with the FAA? What was the response?
Yeah, it was a yes or no question, and it was answered that you would have to take that up with the FAA. The concerns about congestion would have to be taken up with federal lawmakers as well. And that is something that we have heard for the last several days. And so, really, this is going to be something that we will continue to press. The NTSB has indicated that they will be answering some of those questions as well as part of this investigation. And really, these are going to be questions that lawmakers raise as well, several of whom not only raise their concerns about the congestion here at Reagan National Airport, but as it relates to military training and rehearsals and practices and missions that happen in this region as well, and whether that should continue or should they try to do something else moving forward, given the amount of concerns that have brewed up in this entire airport airspace for the last several years. And so there's going to be a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of questions asked, I should say, for several different officials, for the FAA, for NTSB, for lawmakers, as they try to decide how they're going to move forward. There should also going to be a lot of questions raised as well about what happens personnel-wise as relates to air traffic control. That is going to be something else that I think a lot of people will be curious about as it relates to staffing. We know that for years there have been concerns around air traffic control staffing in and out of those towers, some of whom saying that they have to work around the conditions presented to them, and that's funding and that's personnel. And so they say that they are going to have to do several different things in order to try to figure out what those best practices might have to be given the strains on the system as it currently presents. And so I think there is going to be a big review process in all aspects of this to try to make sure that something like what happened earlier this week doesn't happen again.
Skyler Henry, thank you.